Great. Hey everybody, this is Chenille, and today I'm interviewing Audrey Siegl, and she is going to tell us a little bit about Musqueam culture and missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls, and what the various levels of government are doing or are not doing about it.
My name is sχڵemtəna, also Audrey Siegl, and I am from Musqueam. I am by no means a spokesperson for my Musqueam community, but as a Musqueam woman, I have a direct perspective on what it's like to be an Aboriginal woman. I was born and raised in East Van, as well as here on what is now known as the Musqueam Reserve, and what I know about my culture from my own experiences with my family is that we come from women who are beyond tough, who are beyond resilient, and I know that part of that is because of the way we've always lived. We lived off the land, we lived with nature, but we'll say in the last few hundred years, what has happened to our women has forced us to be inhumanly strong and resilient in ways that a lot of people don't understand. And we are a matriarchal culture. Our men and our women have an equal power. We just have different jobs. And looking at my grandmother, looking at my mother, looking at my auntie, looking at so many of the women down here, I can't help but be humbled and feel an amazing amount of pride at the same time with the strength and the grace that they live their lives with, and the way they have a patience to be able to find good solutions to problems instead of like today everything's immediate responses, immediate gratification, immediate everything. So I really am so proud to say that I come from Musqueam, and I'm just so proud of the women, and especially in my family.
You recently ran for a position in local government. What can you say, what can you comment about on the current Vancouver municipal government in terms of homelessness and the Aboriginal women and girls issue and various other things?
I ran for city council under COPE. What I have to say about our municipal government and how they're handling murdered and missing Indigenous women's issues, how they're handling homelessness, they're handling it the same way that these systems have since their inception. All of these levels of government were created to eradicate my people from this land, to gain full access to what they call resources, which we know are our gifts, to be taken care of and never abused. What these governments have done is to systematically strip the people of our civil liberties, of our dignity, of our right to have respect for ourselves. And from a First Nations perspective, the system has never represented me. It has never represented my people. I have a hard time believing that the people who benefit from maintaining the status quo, they're not going to give up the benefits that they gain, even though it is at the expense of communities like the downtown east side. We are at the highest homelessness levels in recorded history. Our current mayor, Gregor Robertson, who was just re-elected, he rode to that mayoral seat 2 times by saying he would end homelessness. And not only did he not end it, we are at a disgustingly high level of homelessness now. Underneath homelessness, underneath murdered and missing Indigenous women, underneath poverty, what we come to as a basis of where everything went wrong, a lot of it is that we have a mental health crisis. We have a spiritual crisis happening because of this disconnection people have from themselves, from their culture, from their ancestors, from the lands they come from, wherever it may be. People are floating around looking for a way to belong, and so many get bought into this system of consumerism and debt. That we are our possessions, we are our home, we are our 2.5 kids, and the reality is that that's not the truth.
So could you give us some concrete examples of how the current systems of power have stripped Aboriginal people of their civil liberties?
This system was set up without even acknowledging us as human beings and as having no rights. We still really aren't considered human. We're still wards of the court if we live on the reserve that we were herded onto. And an example of how we've been stripped of our civil liberties, and not just civil liberties, our inherent rights on this land that my ancestors have been on since the first sunrise. At Oppenheimer, I put my longhouse up, and I was dragged into the BC Supreme Court for daring to break Malcolm Bromley's parkland and City of Vancouver land. I put the longhouse up July 16th. It was not 10 days before, I believe at the end of June, that the City of Vancouver Mayor and Council declared this was unceded land. The Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam land. All the levels of government are going to have to decide what exactly it means to make a declaration of unceded land, because that declaration was promptly followed up with an addendum to reassure anybody who does business with Vancouver that don't worry, this doesn't change anything, it is business as usual. Well, we're getting to the point where they're not going to be able to sit on the fence anymore. Was that Malcolm Bromley's parkland? Or was that my ancestral Musqueam land? Because it can't be both forever. The way I'm treated a lot of the time at doctors' offices, they assume I'm an alcoholic, a drug addict, and a prostitute. And I don't drink, I'm not a prostitute, and I don't use drugs. From day one, this system and society has worked hard to strip me of my dignity and my self-respect. My value as a human being was nothing. And to a lot of people it still is. And I've done a lot of work, and I've done a lot of letting go, and I've done a lot of making my own peace to realize that I deserve to be here, that I play an important role, as does every other person. It's not because I'm from Musqueam, it's not because I'm a woman, it's because I'm a human being. When you live on reserve, you are agreeing to work within a system where we are wards of the court still. We're not allowed to own our land, we're not allowed to get mortgages and different things like that without the band signing for it for us. And we look at the way that our women are allowed to continue to be in danger every day. And in my time at Oppenheimer, one of the big reasons we were told they wanted to shut the park down was because it was unsafe for women. Well, my question was, and still is, that park was unsafe for women, and that area has been unsafe for women for a long time before Tent City popped up in Oppenheimer Park. Why did it not matter before we were there as a visible reminder and a visible awakening to the rest of society that we have a homelessness crisis going on?
Mm-hmm. And can you explain a little bit about what happened at Oppenheimer?
At Oppenheimer, there were some people sleeping in the park. And in this time when homelessness was promised to be ended, the City of Vancouver went and handed out 24-hour eviction notices to these few people who were sleeping in Oppenheimer. And a group of us got wind of this, and the community rallied together, and we stood with these homeless people, or these people who are without homes. And I put my longhouse up, not just to mark this as sacred Indian land, but to provide a refuge, especially a spiritual refuge. Within the next few days, tents just kept turning up, and everything was centered in a circle around the longhouse. A sacred fire was started, and for the most part, I will say, especially the fire department worked with respect and consideration for the sacred fire and the longhouse, and the police worked with us with a certain amount of respect. But instead of actually sitting down with us and talking to the people who actually are at the heart of these issues, The city just kept handing out eviction notices. Eviction notices don't deal with the underlying issues of homelessness, of murdered and missing women, of alcohol and drug abuse. We drafted up our own eviction notice and served it to council and the mayor to remind them that people voted you in there. You are supposed to be representing these people, and not just a few of them, but all of them. And the people of the downtown east side and a lot of the women down there, not only have we been misrepresented and underrepresented, we have completely been not represented in a lot of ways. And so that was July 16th, I believe it was, everybody gathered in the park. And it was October 15th, they sent in the riot squad to take down the camp and forcibly evict everybody from the park. And not only did it not end the homelessness crisis, it created even more distance and mistrust between the mayor and council and our most vulnerable communities of the downtown east side. It just alienated everybody so much more, and it was so unnecessary. Instead of just sitting and talking and figuring things out with us, coming up with real solutions to real problems where everybody has an equal voice and we all work together, nutsamat, as one, to come up with solutions that benefit everybody. Mm-hmm. So now the majority of the people from Oppenheimer, whether they're in an SRO or a shelter, are homeless, because an SRO and a shelter is not a home. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are back out on the street still.
Yeah.
They never left, but it's fine because they're in the doorways, they're in the alleys, they're in the parks, they're under the bridges, they're invisible. They're not an eyesore. They're not a reminder of how this system fails so many.
Mm-hmm. I heard there was a city in the U.S. Where what they do is they give homeless people homes so that they can have a permanent address, and it makes it easier to apply for jobs and apply for,
medical care, exactly, to get your ID, everything.
All of that stuff. And that it actually costs them a lot less than just having people homeless, because people who are homeless, they end up, in jail, they end up in ambulances and hospitals, and it costs the city so much more than just giving them a home.
Yeah. This is the truth. When we recognize the human being in each person, and we do what we can to support that and encourage that. And if that means this person is provided with a home so that they can get their ID, so that they can have a fixed address to get their medical care, so that they can have a fixed address to apply for jobs, to again empower themselves and be what so many of us strive to be, a productive member of society, and not just in the consumerist way, but that we're giving good and we're making a difference out there to empower people to be able to find their way back to themselves, to light, to freedom again. This is the way we should all be going.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And do you think that increasing the number of women and Aboriginal women and women of color in local, provincial, and federal government would change a lot of the things?
I know that it would make a huge difference. The way I see it, we need warriors on every front. And when we have our women in all levels of government, not only do we have that representation, but all of a sudden we have access to information we didn't have before about how exactly what are the inner workings of this system. We can see where we can actually start chipping away at it and removing big hunks and replacing it with new plans and actions, not just pieces of paper, but plans and actions that serve the needs of the majority, not the tiny 1%. Mm-hmm. And a big start is having Indigenous women involved in all of these levels of government.
Yeah. What are some things that Canadian governments can do to build trust again with First Nations people and communities?
Actions they can take, one of the first things that comes to my mind is stop building on our sacred sites. Stop giving permits to desecrate our ancestors' resting places. Stop forcing us to work against you. How about we all work together to protect what is important for everybody? Returning the rights of Indigenous peoples to be humans, to no longer be wards of the court. We existed on this land for well over 10,000 years. It's been a few hundred years since colonization started doing its damage. Now, what is that, a few hundred years compared to over 10,000 years? We existed here as adults, as competent stewards of the environment. And what the government can do is another big action, because I'm not interested in the pieces of paper. We don't just need an inquiry, and we don't just need it now. We need action to completely stop the damage that is being done to our cultures by allowing our women to be violated the way that they are, by allowing our women to be beaten and raped and murdered, and to have it not even matter. It has to happen, and it has to happen now. And this is one way to start building trust. But there has to be concessions and negotiations made. It cannot only be this system that has been enforced and imposed upon us, this colonial system that will never work for us. At the very least, it must be balanced with our traditional ways of living on this land. Because as I've already said, we've been here for 10,000 years. We had to have been doing at least something right in order to thrive the way that we did. So let us step back into the role of leadership. Let us step back into our dignity and power, which, by the way, we're no longer asking permission for and waiting for people to allow this to happen. We are doing it peacefully, and we are doing it in the most humble ways possible to regain our dignity and our power and to reclaim our inherent rights. And that's a terrifying phrase for a lot of people, but by inherent rights I mean our right to exist, our right to protect, our right to say how many fish can be caught, how many trees can you take down. No, you cannot dig in this earth here and keep taking this oil or resource from it, because of the devastating effect that it has. It's not just a drop. Every one of these drops has ripples that are so far-reaching. And we need to not just be included, and this whole idea of collaborative consultation. It never has existed. So not only do we need to seriously be consulted, we need to be all playing on a level playing field as equals. That means the government has to give up a lot of their authority, control, and power. I want to see that happen.
Name like 2 things that white people can do to support First Nations groups and Aboriginal people.
2 things that non-Indigenous person can do to support their Indigenous brothers and sisters, will say. Work to have an open mind and an open heart. Work to know that you're doing good work, not just for you, not just for your family, not just for your community, but that you're leaving good behind everywhere you go, with everyone you interact with, no matter where they're from. And the second thing is, when you meet someone, especially we'll use the example of the downtown east side, the stereotypical image of an Indian, don't just judge that person. And we know this, we've heard this, but the actual action, the action you can take is recognize the human being underneath everything that is used to divide us. Our skin color is used to divide us. Where we're born is used to divide us. Our political ideologies are used to divide us. Let's not let those things divide and define the differences between us. Rather, let's use them as a kickoff point to start working together, because sχڵemtəna, we are of one heart and one mind. And when we work together as one, man, woman, brown, white, red, yellow, we will be unstoppable in creating better days for all, in creating a world and systems of government and politics that represent everybody.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Hajka.